Hello, merriment makers. Welcome back to the Merriment Making Podcast. I'm your host, Mary England, and today I am going to jump on the trend of looking back at 2016. Now, I know that this is something that people were doing on Instagram, but why not go bigger and do it even deeper? So, this episode, I am going to walk you through the carousel that I created on Instagram that is a bit of a highlight reel of what my 2016 looked like. That also literally includes a highlight reel because I always made those for my year and I documented them, and I have used my own practice of the Merry New Year plan to make top 5 lists of every year, and part of that is making a compilation video. So it was actually quite easy for me to go back and take a look at everything and utilize that documentation. But I'm not just going to tell you what I did and, show you those pictures and give you additional context for them, but I am going to tell you what my goals were for 2016. I'm going to tell you how they did or didn't materialize. And I'm going to tell you kind of how I feel about what I did in 2016, what it looks like in terms of how I'm doing those things now, or if I'm not. What do I like about what I did in 2016, who I am now, 10 years later, and we're just kind of going to give you a lot more context in terms of what I've learned about this, because something that I really liked about this trend was getting a glimpse into people's lives, and there was something really cool about some of the people that I saw being like, wow, I didn't know that you were doing all this back then. Maybe I wasn't following you. Or, I just didn't remember all these things. Or I am realizing how much that year was a big setup for where you are now. And I don't know if that's something that is like universal or cosmic or something, but it does seem to be a bit of a trend with artists and visionaries, and I don't know, but it was very interesting to me. So I noticed that trend with myself. So let's talk about that today. So the first thing is, my first slide was the goals for 2016. These were handwritten in my journal, and I only had 7 goals, which is very cute. I think it's probably way more reasonable looking back. When I make goals now, there probably are way too many for me to realistically accomplish. So that is probably something for me to learn from 2016 Mary. The goals are: 1, sell enough books and e-courses to sustain myself. 2, move in with Joe. That was my boyfriend at the time. 3, speak at 7 events. 4, get to 10,000 followers on Instagram and Pinterest. 5, read 7 new books. 6, release a second e-product. And 7, do more street art and send more mail. Okay, so let's go through each of these. First, did I sell enough books and e-courses to sustain myself then, and am I doing it now? Then, I don't think so. I definitely didn't even have like enough things that would have been the potential for me to do that. At this point, I have been out of my business, I have been out of my old job and starting my business for 2.5, 3 years. I still have a fair amount of savings, and I'm living at home still. So I don't have a lot of bills. And this year I also started working with a company that I will talk about in a bit called We Love Colors. So I started getting a check from them every month. Now, I was definitely making money from sponsored posts, from my e-courses, and selling my books, but it was not what I expected it to be. And definitely from the books, like the residuals from those books were wild. And looking back also at that process from the book, I will say that working with a mid-level publisher is something that I definitely don't recommend to do, because I ended up basically fronting $10,000 for that process. And that was another way that I lost a lot of money. So No, I would say that I did not sell enough books and e-courses on my own to sustain myself financially to be independent. And am I doing that now? Still no. Absolutely not. I would actually say that I was selling more e-courses back then because it was something that was much more novel. And now people are a lot more wary of e-courses and e-products. I'm more consistent, I would say, but people are just, I don't know, it's a very different environment. And I'm also in, the process of looking and well, I'm in the process of supplementing my income in a different way additionally. And to be fair, we're also in a place where things are a lot more expensive and I am completely independent. Like I don't, live with my parents and I have no support from them at all anymore, right? So it's a very different situation. The second goal was to move in with Joe. So I've dated two men named Joe in my life. This was the first one. And I had started dating him in 2014. So we had been together for 2 years at this point, or I guess really just a year and a couple months. And I did eventually move in with him. And we lived together for about a year before we broke up. And I didn't move in with him in 2016, but I can technically say that I achieved that goal, even though it was a mistake. The next goal was to speak at 7 events. Now, I don't know that I spoke at 7 events in 2016. I definitely spoke at a number of them, but I don't think it was 7. And I don't really have like a list available for me to look at that, but I definitely was out and about. We're even going to go into one of the ones that I spoke at internationally. I was definitely even getting paid to speak at events at this point. And that's something that I would really like to do and bring back. I even had my own, I started doing a lot more of my own events at this point. I had been doing them since the genesis of my business in 2013. So that wasn't super new, but I was really expanding on what I could do and looking at it from more of a business standpoint at this point. Get to 10,000 followers on Instagram and Pinterest. I do not think that I got to that goal this year. I don't know. I looked to see if I had written that down anywhere and it wasn't easily accessible for me to find. I don't think that I got there. Once I reached 10,000 followers somewhere a couple years in to that frame, like somewhere around 2016, 2018, 2019, I kind of leveled out and I've been basically around there for a pretty long time. Right now I'm at 11,000, like 11.2. So I can say that I have reached that. I don't think it happened in 2016, but I'm also not sure. On Pinterest, yeah, I have actually a lot of people on Pinterest. I don't even know what that is. I can look that up real quick. I probably have the most followers on Pinterest. It's quite weird. And it's not something that I even really know how to make the most of or utilize because it seems relatively counterintuitive for me in terms of like, how do you promote something? Because it's kind of just like a passive scrolling situation. I guess that is true for Instagram, but I don't know. I just don't really understand how to market it. But I have, let's see, 22.4 thousand followers on Pinterest. And that's been like that for a while. I probably absolutely had reached that on Pinterest at that point. Read 7 new books. I don't know. Let me see if I wrote down if I had written any books. Okay, I definitely had at least read 5, but I also included my own book on this list. So I'm not sure if I was just doing that because I had released my book that year and I was like, let me include myself, or I was reaching. The books that I wrote as my top 5 were Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert, Trainee by Laura Jane Grace, The Wander Society by Carrie Smith, You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero, and then my own book, This Is About You, Amazing, Weird, Beautiful You by Mary England. Then, in terms of today, I definitely read that many books a year, but I have made sure that I'm reading them as an audiobook because I just realized that with the way that I process information, it's the best version for me. I probably read 2 books a month. Release a second e-product. I definitely absolutely accomplished that. That was like, I mean, between 2014 and 2017, I was on fire with making new things. I released the Body Positive 101 course. I mean, there were so many things, and it was all unteachable at the time. And yeah, I was a rapid fire machine with e-products back then. And this year, yeah, I would say, just last year I made well more than that as well. Do more street art and send more mail. I don't know that I sent more mail that year. I don't really see too much of that. I see me talking about it a lot. I see me taking a lot of pictures. I'm not sure that I actually followed through with that. I don't really see too much evidence of it, but I don't know that I didn't either. And in terms of the street art, I definitely did street art. Not necessarily to the effect that I would like, but that's probably always true. I always wish that I can do more street art. Okay, so let's look into the rest of the slide. So the first slide is I published my first book. So in 2015, I started a GoFundMe to help fundraise money for publishing my first book, because I had kind of like marked out how much I would need for hiring an editor and, like all the different kinds of people that you need for services, a photographer, all those kinds of things. And I figured out how much it would be. And then I put it up on the GoFundMe, and I, did all those fun things. I made all the bonuses and the swag and all that stuff. And while it was up there, I got this email from a publisher called Mascot Publishers. And they were like, "We love the concept of your book. This is so cool. We would love to publish you." And I was like, "Oh my God, me? I am so naive. That's amazing." And I was just like wide-eyed and bushy-tailed and didn't really understand what that meant, even once I got more details. I just thought that this was something where I was being seen and accepted, and I knew it wasn't like Penguin Publishing, but I still thought that it was like, I don't know. They kept, giving me all these pieces of information like, we're going to get you on the Barnes and Noble list, and we can help with marketing, and we give you your own ISBN and all of these things. And I was just like so excited. I was so excited. I was already just so motivated and excited to do this. I genuinely could not believe that this was happening. So then we kind of, continue the process. I already set the limit of what the GoFundMe is going to be. And when we find out, because I also was going to publish it, I was originally just going to self-publish it. I had made a couple small books from doing things like an art show, right? Like one time I did an art show with my friend Erica, and I wanted to publish all of the pictures from it so that the people that did the submissions could have it. And I used this printing press thing that was online, like a self-publishing thing. This is before Amazon KDP was really I don't even know if it was a thing, and it definitely wasn't common or easily accessible. But that was pretty much my plan, was just to use something like that, just like a self-publishing thing. And then they tell me kind of what it's going to cost to print, and I am dumbfounded by the price that they give me. It's thousands and thousands of dollars. And then I realized that this is the estimate for black and white. And I was like, I would rather not publish it than put it in black and white. I mean, have you met me? Are you insane? So then they tell me that, to do a full color book, they have to do it at an international printing house. I think it was in Malaysia. And I already signed all this paperwork. It was wild. And yeah, I mean, just the printing itself, the contracts, the fees for them housing the book so that they could, send it out. Because that was one of the other benefits, was that, when someone made a purchase, that they would, they would send it out. They would, ship it for me. Oh, I spent probably $10,000 on that. And that's before I hired an editor, my photographer, all those other things. It was so expensive. I was losing everything. And my dad also lost a lot of money because he had to help me because we were screwed. But I mean, once I got the book, it just felt so incredible. I mean, I remember the day that it came. I think it was March 2016. And that was when that app Periscope was on around. I don't even remember what the deal with that was. It was just about being live, I think. It was also when Vine was around. Those poor people on Vine. So I remember I got that package and I ran in and I opened it and I was crying on Periscope. I was so thrilled with it. And people were so supportive of me. It was so crazy. I didn't ever want to ask for more money because, I mean, one, I don't think you can even just like, you can't fix or change the GoFundMe. And I wasn't going to like start another one. I felt embarrassed and ashamed. And I was so grateful for all of the support that I had already received. And I didn't ever, I mean, I don't even think I've ever really shared this, honestly. And then I had so many people back me in so many different ways. The pre-orders were insane. On the first slide, you'll see it's like all the pictures of the people with the books. I had an ex-boyfriend buy it, and he was like a professional writer, and he said this is better than anything I could have written. The reviews that came in were, it still has only 5 stars on Amazon. Like, the reviews are just so heartwarming. I can't believe how much it was so helpful. I mean, years later, I remember getting this message from someone, Kalichi, telling me that she read the book and then was inspired to take on her own like version of self-love and healing, and she lost like 200 pounds. The ways that this book has been helpful for people is just crazy. I wrote the book in 3 months. I don't know that other people know that either. I basically locked myself in a room and wrote the entire thing. It was crazy. There's another picture of me where I did do like a signing at Barnes & Noble. I went to 3 different locations that the Mascot publishers had orchestrated for me. And it was deeply underwhelming, honestly, because like no one was there to see me. That wasn't a thing. No one knew what I was there for. I'm pretty sure that even this picture is like staged. Like I'm signing the book and someone's taking my picture, probably my dad, but like no one really came to see me. It wasn't, you know what I mean? It's not like, I'm not like Louise Hay at a Barnes & Noble. It's, I don't know. It was weird, but I did get to see my book on the shelf at Barnes & Noble a couple times before they took it away. And that was one of the more incredible parts of it, the feeling of that. And it's funny because they didn't even have like a self-esteem section back then. It's wild how much the self-development world has evolved since I wrote that book. And yeah, so this is like, you know, it's the 10-year anniversary of the publishing of this book, and I've looked into it, and I do actually have all the rights back from my book, and I am going to re-release it as like a second edition so that I can profit off of it again. So stay tuned for that, and if you want to help me remake that money back, it'll be a great time to celebrate that in 2026. Okay, so the second slide is about events. So, you know, one of my goals was to speak at 7 events. Again, I don't know that I did that, but I did have a really great experience where, because of all the ways that I was showing up online and, you know, the algorithm actually sharing it with people, I got seen by all these incredible opportunities. There was this woman, Desiree, who ran this group in Canada, in Vancouver. It was called the I can't remember whatever their like province is, like BC, I think, or something. I don't know. But it was a symposium for neurofibromatosis, and I had never heard of that disease before. But it's basically this disease where you kind of develop a lot of tumors. They're both inside of you and on the outside of you. And she thought it would be really cool at their yearly, like, it's kind of like a conference, where if I would come and talk about like being body positive. That was something that I was really known for probably in 2016. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So they paid me to come. I also made a lot of mistakes with that because I didn't really take into consideration the exchange rate, both for how much I was getting paid and also for like because I just got my book. So when I got there, I was selling my book and I was like doing it with Canadian money and I didn't understand what I was doing and I lost so much money. Oh God, the money mistakes. Oh my goodness. But this event was so much fun. I remember like no one really understanding what I was doing because it was like a very professional conference and everyone that's getting up is talking about, pain and suffering and like, support and stuff, but it was all very serious. And then I get up there in my like outfit. I'm all yellow and pink and I have a bow in my hair and I'm wearing my like splattered tie-dye tights and you can see on the it's like my little PowerPoint presentation and it's like says weird in rainbow letters. And behind me I have these giant trash bags that I had filled up in the hotel room of balloons. And I had tried to explain to like the event coordinators that once I'm done on this slide, I need you to like, bring them up to me. And I like threw them. I placed all these Sharpies on the tables out in front, on all the tables with all the people that were there. And I just like threw them out into the audience. And I said something that must have been, I don't know, it was probably inspirational, motivational. I don't remember. And I said, I want you to write something positive on one of these balloons, like an affirmation kind of thing, like a good message to someone else. And then I want you to bop it around. Like first we just kind of played with them and we bopped them around so they wouldn't fall. And then when they got one, they wrote it and then we bopped them around again. And then you kind of like got another one. Honestly, it's a great idea. I loved it. The amount of balloons that were involved in 2016 is wild, truly. It's the balloon budget was is insane. I went through so many of those helium tanks. I was just like constantly at Target, Walmart, and Party City buying helium tanks. It was a real situation. So that was a really fun conference, and I also got to go to Vancouver for the first time. They paid for my flight, and I got to explore there for a little bit. It was a really cool experience. The next slide is me turning 28. And I rented a party bus for my birthday. These are not in any sort of order, I'm realizing, and that's okay. So part of the thing that's happening this year is that I get really into ketamine. This is where this addiction really, really starts. So I had been introduced to it. The first time was New Year's Eve on like going from 2014 into 2015. That was the first time I'd ever touched it. And I didn't touch it again for months. And then it was still just like this thing that was happening like within this friend group that I had been introduced to through my boyfriend. I wasn't really like a part of the group yet, so to speak, and I hadn't really seen behind the curtain of it all. But when there would be like actual parties, and I wasn't living there either, really. I mean, I never really officially lived there, but there were, towards the end of 2016, I basically was living there. I mean, I had all of my things there, I wasn't like on the lease or anything, but I was living there, you know what I mean? And it was just something that was like, oh, we're partying, and I was down for anything. I always said I would try anything twice, and I did. I tried every drug. But the thing that happened was with ketamine, I really liked it. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but that's probably for another episode or my book. But by the time I was, by this time, when I'm 28, I'm definitely having an issue with it. And I'm like doing drugs on the bus. I mean, you can literally see that like Party Monster is playing in the background, which is it's like actually a movie about them doing ketamine. My other friends that I had that weren't a part of that friend group were starting to like distance themselves from me because they didn't really understand what was happening, which was deeply fair. And yeah, it was definitely becoming a problem. But to be fair, also renting a party bus was a really cool experience and something I got to check off my bucket list. The next thing on the slides is the monochrome outfits that I took pictures with. I dressed myself up in every color, and then I would go find a wall that matched that outfit in Baltimore. So this was inspired by the house that Lars built. She did a project and she blogged about it. Blogging was still hot. It was on its way out, but it was still happening. And she called it Dress the Rainbow. And I was like, I love this idea. I want to do it. And me and my friend Kristen, we did it together. And we went out like 3 different times. And I had scouted in advance all the walls and made lists of the locations. And then her and I would get dressed up in the colors and we would go find the walls and we would take the pictures of them. So you can see this like, you know, collage of all the colors, the red, pink, salmon, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, gray, black, and white. And I later, at the end of this year, started replicating that process again. I think by the end of the year, I had done pink, red, green, orange, and purple. And then in 2017, I finished it. And that that version is like a much more elevated version because I was taking those photos with Maura and the outfits were just a lot more put together and I had like the same props for them so they all looked a lot more succinct. And but this is kind of like the OG original version of it and it's very cute and raw. The next thing is that I started the Uncustomary Babes Facebook group. So this is what turned into the Merriment Makers, which turned into my membership group. At the beginning, in 2016, it was free. And then I think it turned into $3 and then it was $5 and then it was $8. And then, you know, that wasn't like every week or anything that was increasing. It was just kind of like over time because at first it was kind of like, hey, let me like have a place for everybody to gather. And then I realized what I could do with it. I was like, oh, wow, I can like make modules. I can focus on one theme every single month. And I started doing that. I started creating masterclasses and meditations and tapping and journaling and like all these different resources on different themes every month. And I would show up live and sometimes I would do these like crazy outfits and I would do themes where I would dress up like Andrew WK or Bob Ross or Mr. Rogers. And I would like do these like weird masterclasses dressed as them. And I was really also getting into like tarot and stuff at this point also. Probably not 2016. I think probably more 2017. But it was like a really interesting time. But anyway, for the Uncustomary Babes, this is the genesis of that. And you can see on this slide, I had made the membership cards, which had the like, quote, 10 commandments of self-love, which were just kind of like what I thought were like values of, self-love. And I would mail them to people, and it was really cute. And we had a lot of people in there at the beginning when it was free. But once I started charging, people were like, "No, I don't want to pay," which is how it goes. And that went on until last year. So that went on for 9 years, and now you can still get the Merriment Makers, but it's a vault, and there's like almost 2,000 resources, probably even more, in there. And it's it's an incredible place to just like go through. It developed into an ethos, which is, it's basically like feel good, make good, do good. So feel good is about, self-love in terms of how can we practice embodiment and have fun and be weird and play. And then making and creating good is about, figuring out what your passion is and your creativity and connecting to other people. And then doing good is about going back out into the community and being kind and making art and spreading joy and being altruistic and being an activist and then just being authentically you in a way that inspires others. Okay, the next one, I started my podcast. So this was originally my friend April had a friend, well, she has 2 friends, they're married now, Dee and Nick, and Nick was really big into podcasting. He had his own like company. It was called Tin Can Media, and he had a bunch of podcasts, and they were like, you would be a great person to have on as a guest. So they brought me on as a guest for like some live thing that they were doing. I don't even remember what we talked about. And then he was like, what if we produced you? What if you had your own podcast? And I was like, yeah. So then I started it, and this screenshot is like the blog post that I made about my inaugural podcast, which was called You're Always Beautiful, and that one you can still access. And for like a year and a half, I feel like what we would do was every time I wanted to record a podcast, Dee would come on, and she was like there, and she would just be there simultaneously while I was recording, and she would upload it. And I mean, it was helpful, I guess, but now, I don't really need to do that. I just kind of do it myself. And they eventually dissolved Tin Can, and I basically stopped the podcast at that point because I was like, I don't even know what to do. And then eventually I picked it back up again, and now, I'm recording right now and still doing the podcast. I also started my YouTube channel, and that was something that I didn't know what I was doing. Honestly, still don't. But this slide, you can see the welcome message that I made. I hired someone to create a jingle for me. I still remember he was like, wow, I've never had someone be so specific about what they want in a jingle. I was like, yeah, I want clapping. I want ukulele. I want it upbeat. I hired him on Fiverr, I think. Fiverr? No, Fiverr, right? Because it's like $5. And it was so cute. It was really cute. And I still love it. It's like my intro music here. And I made like a little intro video that's just like, hey. And you could see like that old font that I used for everything. It was so like silly. And I think it was called Lemon Sun. And I wanted to make a lot of stuff for that. But I didn't really it was very spotty, and I didn't really do anything. And then I guess a couple years back now, maybe like 2023, I started doing like Merriment Mondays live and, cross-posting my Instagram reels and things over there. And now I think I have like, I don't know, probably over 500 followers on YouTube, which is not a lot by any means. I would love to get to at least 1,000 this year. But, compared to Instagram or Pinterest, that's like nothing for me, right? Or just even in general, probably. But I think for a long time I had like 30 followers on there. So once I started really, being more consistent with it, it grew. Okay. The next one is in 2016, I got T-boned. So I had this red Honda Fit, and everyone knew that car. Her name was Gabby. I was named Cars. And I was driving. I was on one of my little like exploration drives in the city. And I was making, actually, I was at a light. That's the weirdest part. So I was at a light, which is probably the only thing that saved me, because I was at a stop, full stop. And there's the way that, some streets are in cities. It's not exclusive to Baltimore, but, on the sides of the roads, people park there. But it was in the middle of the day. It was a Wednesday. And it was the afternoon, and I was driving around looking for, cool stuff to photograph. I used to definitely like make sure that I was driving around looking for roadside attractions and beautiful things to share with people. And while I was doing that, so I'm at this light, and a giant Escalade is driving, but they're driving in the left lane, which is not really supposed to be for driving. It's supposed to be for parking, but no one was parked there at the time because it was the middle of the day. So he's using it. It's kind of like driving in a bus lane. You know what I mean? But either way, even if it was available for parking, or even if it was available for driving, I'm in. So we can call that the far left lane, and I'm in the second left lane. Even if we want to say that it was available for driving. So I'm in the second left lane, and I'm going to be turning left, and he comes barreling down the far left lane, and I'm stopped at a light, and as the light turns green, I'm going to go make a left-hand turn. Now, if you're in the far left lane, you should also be making a left with me, definitely not going straight. If there's two lanes that are, turning left, one of them should be for parking regardless, but you shouldn't be going straight when someone else is turning left. And that's what happened. I was turning left, and I didn't think to look behind me for a car, but that's what happened. As I'm turning left and I'm going so slow, which is really the only thing that saved me, he T-bones me in my driver's side with an Escalade going probably like, I don't know, 35, 40 miles an hour, because he was like approaching the light as it turned green, so he didn't have to slow down. And then it all happened, very quickly. It didn't slow down. Everybody always says things like slow down. It did not. But I got like, a huge surge of adrenaline, and I couldn't get out of my car. It was like everything was, smushed in. It was like my door was in me. It was like inside of my seat, and all the airbags go off, and I was like, oh my God. And I like climb out of the like window of the other side. It was wild. And no, probably not the window. That doesn't make any sense. I'm sure the other side was fine. I don't know. I just know I had to go out the passenger seat. Um, or maybe, why am I thinking it's the window? Is it because the airbag went off? I don't know. I don't know. So I get out and um, I have to wait for the cops and everything. And we were in a community that was not familiar to me. And there were a lot of witnesses, and they were all on his side because they were like part of his community. And they all lied to the cops. And because of that, I wasn't able to get like any insurance money. It was awful. And I also didn't have anybody to call because everybody was at work. It was on a Wednesday. I had to literally call my drug dealer to come get me. And he had to wait until he wasn't high. So I just sat there on the corner for a long time on the sidewalk and had all of these people meanly staring at me, acting like I did something wrong when I was the one that was hit. And like, I don't know. I don't understand. I still don't really understand why that was like, I looked like I was like a villain or something. But yeah, so I didn't have a car for a while. That really sucked. And my grandma had died a couple years before, and she had left me like a small, it wasn't a, I mean, it was clearly enough to buy a used car, but it wasn't, you know, like a trust fund kind of inheritance, but it was being saved mostly for like when I moved out. But there was no money for me to get a car. So I used that money to buy a used car at CarMax, and I just got another Honda Fit, and everyone's like, "Do you just have the same car?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I just got the exact same car." I was so mad that I couldn't get a color, but I waited for months and months, and I couldn't find any other car that was in a color. And I still have that car to this day. That car is now 10 years old, and it is definitely on its last legs. If people are wondering, people ask me like, "Did you get another silver Honda Fit?" No, that is the same one. I need to get another one at some point. Okay, the next one is the photos. So in 2016, I started working with Mara, and she was someone that I was introduced to through that friend group in that house, and she was like a girlfriend of one of the people, and we weren't really super close for a long time. You know, we had known each other for like over a year, and we had gone to things and stuff together, but we weren't, you know, deeply connected. But she had told me that she was starting to get like interested in the things that I had done, and she was really impressed by like the book that I had made, and she was interested in getting back into her photography, and she offered to take a couple pictures of me to like kind of jumpstart that. And we took a couple pictures on the street. We took some with balloons, we took some with paint, and I think that was it. And then I love them a lot. And I was like, this is a great idea. What if we do this like monthly? We take a few photos every month. So I have more photos for, you know, Instagram and my blog and stuff. That would be so much fun. And we started doing that. And we were mostly doing it outside or just like at the house. We didn't really have lighting. We didn't have a lot of tools or anything. We were just making it work, you know? And it was really fun. And that's really how we bonded. So for, I think it was like, we did those original set of photos probably in like February, or I think it was February when we did that like original set when she was interested. And then, oh, and she had also taken the photos for my book in 2015. Yeah. So the year before I had hired her to do my photos. So actually maybe those photos, yeah, that actually makes more sense. I think those original photos that she took to jumpstart it was from the winter before in 2015. And then she took because I knew what she could do, she took the photos for my book. And that was an incredible experience. She even like rented out this very, very fancy camera, and we had a really great time doing that and bonded a little bit more over that, but we still weren't super close. And then in March of 2016, we started doing it a little bit more regularly. I remember the first one we did was actually inspired because I haven't gotten to that yet, but I was working with We Love Colors, and I wanted to do some photos where we featured the tights on different people. So I had my friends and we all went to the park and took some photos of us all in the tights. And yeah, she did other things too. It's the timeline's jumping around. Like I have this picture here from the bubble wrap. So I was like, back then it was so easy to get sponsored by things too. And bubble wrap also isn't even a company anymore. But I always celebrated Bubble Wrap Appreciation Day in January, which is still a holiday. It's just that bubble wrap isn't even a company anymore. It was like absorbed by something else, and now it's not technically like a name brand. It's just, I don't know, it's called something else, whatever the generic, you know the popping plastic for wrapping your shipping things, something like that. I don't know. But when it was still a company and they had seen that I had done things like I was featured in the paper for wrapping a bus stop in bubble wrap and things like that, they were like, oh wow, you like to do stuff like this, so what if we just send you like a ton of bubble wrap and you do something fun. So that year, that was actually a decade ago, when that big, I called it Snowzilla, a huge snowstorm happened, and I was like, oh my god, we can't do anything that we were planning on doing for this bubble wrap day. We have to do it though. So we like covered the floor with bubble wrap and we just like rolled around in paint and stuff, and we still took all these fun pictures. It was really great. And you can see us like in the snow outside. My friends literally walked to us because it was so unsafe to drive. Okay. And then yeah, so I think the pictures really started in March because we did that We Love Colors tights thing in the park. And then we started doing a little bit more. And again, it was still very, not necessarily makeshift. I mean, she knew exactly what she was doing. She was a good photographer. She always was. But we just, we weren't working with the best environment. It was always easier when we were outside because the lighting was so easy to work with, natural lighting. And then I think it was that summer. No. It was that fall. It was like, it was September. She knew about this studio and you could rent out a studio, and she knew someone. So she was like, what if we did this? So we started paying for that, and she was going to use it herself too. And I paid her, and we had this access to this studio, and it was like all these stairs, and it was so cumbersome to like drag up all of my all of my props all the time, and it was really janky and strange, but it was so much fun. It was so much fun. It was a photo studio that other people were using. So they had all these other props there too, but it was so cool to have the ability to like use professional lighting and backdrops. And I started buying backdrops, and I started planning for these photo shoots every month, and we just got more and more detailed, and she got to like play with her skills and do flat lays and shots and stuff, and it just really blew up, and we got so close. And it was probably the next year where people started like doing this like weird fan thing with her and I, and being like, Maura and Mary are dating and there's no way that they're not. And to be clear, we never were, but we were very close for a very long time. And we kind of stopped talking in 2020, and then we started talking again in like 2022. And then the friendship just kind of naturally dissolved on its own, but I still love her and wish her all the best. But you can see that these are some of the photos that we took. I mean, there's hundreds of them. She did incredible work, and she did it consistently well, and we took some of the most iconic photos that I've ever taken in my entire career, and I'm always going to be grateful for all of those. And it was a really magical time. And I think one of the cool parts of it was that I was aware of it. There's some things where you look back and you're like, you don't realize that that's the Belle Epoque golden age that you're in, but I knew it at that time. I knew what we were doing, and it was really wonderful. And then we stopped renting that studio I think we only had it for a year and a half, and then we stopped. Okay. But we still kept taking photos. We just did it in my basement. Okay. And then the next one is the We Love Colors. So in the very end of 2015, I got noticed by We Love Colors online. They are a small business technically. it's a tights company. And I had bought their tights back when I worked at the psych rehab, because when I gained a bunch of weight, I was like, how am I still supposed to dress colorfully? Because at that point, being plus size was like, it was horrible if you wanted to dress in colors. It was just absolutely, there was no options going to anywhere. It was like, oh, do you want to wear this exact style and do it in, the only color was like black, gray, browns, muted colors, and maybe purple. I was so over it. And when I found that there was a place that had tights in, it was like 70 different shades, but they were also, you know, up to like 4X. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So I must have just tagged them in a post where I was wearing like one of the 3 pairs that I had. And I wore them. I wore those out. I mean, I had a purple pair, I had a blue pair, I had a teal pair, and I just wore the crap out of them. And when they saw me wearing them, they were like, oh, wow. And looking back now, knowing how their process was, they were actively searching for people so that they could like, now I know it's called like user generated content. So you can kind of like cross post things. And that's what they were doing with me. And they were excited because I was also, I mean, I was colorful. I was making my own content. You know, I was posting regularly. I had a relatively good following and engagement. And I was also plus size. So I was hitting another dynamic, or what is it called? Demographic. And they were like, this is awesome. We want to fly you down to Miami, which is where their headquarters was. It's a pretty small operation, honestly. So I went there and I met the owner and the like main, his like right hand person named Aminta. I stayed with her and I got to like dye my own tights, and they mailed me all of these tights. So I got some of my own that were just like, you know, straight off the line, that were for me in my own size, but they also mailed me like tons, I mean, physically tons of these tights. And you can see this, one of the boxes. I remember the day that it arrived. So these were tights that were technically, quote, imperfect. So some of them were actually like messed up from the line. Maybe they didn't have like, you know, the hem was wrong or something, or they were asymmetrical or something. But a lot of them just had like a slight hole, you know, and technically, you know, because they had integrity, they didn't want to sell them. But they were like, what do we do with them? So they were really into the idea of like making art projects. So I was like, okay, cool. So I would like help find people that wanted to do that. I made an art installation that I made a couple art installations with them because they're fun to work with. It's like a fabric. And I also, I remember my friend Charlotte, she decorated a bike with them. It was really fun. And I would do all these like photos and content creation, and I was basically like their marketing designer, and it was great. And I met with them multiple times a week, and I got paid, I think it was like $800 every month to do that, and it was a wonderful supplement for my business at the time. It was a really perfect thing. I worked with them for about a year, and then there was just some, I don't want to say creative differences, because one, that's not necessarily the thing, and also I hate when people say that, because you're like, what does that mean? But it was mostly just like, it was a lot of like budget issues, honestly, that they had. They're a small company, and that's, you know, that's the reality of it. But then also it was just kind of like the amount that they were expecting from me. There was like a lot of like not clear communication about what was and what wasn't expected, and it was getting kind of frustrating. So I just kind of was like, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. The next slide is Playa. So when I first met my friend April, who I'm still friends with, she had told me about how she had gone to Burning Man and all these other burns and stuff. And when she met me, she was like, you know, I think you would love going to a burn. And I was like, I don't understand what that is. You know, I didn't really know anything about it. And I was like, I don't really understand. And when she would explain it and show me these pictures, I was like, that looks incredible. Wow. She's like, there's so much art. It's just like these wacky, absurd, campy people. And you see this incredible stuff that you would never imagine. It's like a magical wonderland. And I was like, wow, how do you do that? And she was like, well, you camp. And I was like, oh, I'm out. I am out. Nope, never mind. Not worth it. So, that was years before 2016, years. And then when I met this group that my boyfriend was in, they were what you call burners. So that means that they go to burns. And again, I hadn't seen behind the curtain yet of this group, but I they were like, yeah, we go to PDF. It's called Playa del Fuego, and it was located in Delaware, so it was like one of the more local burns. The main burn is Burning Man. That's like how it started back in like the 70s, and it's in an actual desert, which is, playa. Like that's kind of, let's yeah. So but there's a bunch of regional burns all over the world, and some of them are themed, some of them are like a frozen burn, some of them are beaches, and this is just kind of like, it's just a field, really. It's really cool. I mean, the concept is very cool. You build everything up and you leave no trace, and you camp and you create art, and it's a no money kind of situation. Everything's gifted. You're supposed to bring things to share. It's very like eco-friendly, and then there's a ceremonial burn where there's like a big infrastructure of a wooden thing. It, at Burning Man, it's a man, right? They're literally burning a man, but then there's some other kind of like edifice of, at Playa there was always something different, and sometimes there were multiple of them, and you could like participate in like writing something on it that you wanted to burn. There were a lot of interactive art installations. I loved it. The first one that I went to was actually in 2015, and I think, yes, was fall 2015, and then this is the second one that I went to, and I still really had just, oh wait, is this the first one I went to? No, this is the second one. And yeah, fall 2015 was the first one I went to, and when I went to the first one, I was just absolutely, oh, I was stunned. I was just amazed by everything that was happening. And the second one, I still really had a lot of that optimism and joy, and I even came prepared. You can see like that heart that I make is from the tights. I'm wearing the tights. I was really into We Love Colors and promoting them and being aligned with the business. And I was in this friend group that was, felt really supportive. I felt like I was finding a new group of friends that was really like expressive and free and non-judgmental, which was something that I wasn't really experiencing in my other friend group. I was getting a lot of flack for a lot of other things, and some of it was for good reason and some of it wasn't. We were in our 20s, and we weren't, no one was evolved by any means yet. And when I had to pick, I guess, between the two kinds of groups that I had, I was like, I felt like I had this kind of group of like vanilla friends who weren't willing to talk about things that were deeper or bigger or taboo, and try things. And then the other group was doing those things, and at that point those values were more important to me. And what ended up happening by immersing myself in the latter group was I was exposed to all those drugs. And when people make jokes about how like burns and music festivals are just an excuse to do drugs, it doesn't have to be. Like when April was telling me about the burns, she's not doing drugs at those things. Like she's literally just camping and enjoying the art. Like that's what's happening. But for the group that I was with, that was like 100% what was happening. And it wasn't, it was like this sliding thing that happened over time. I know that as we went on, it just became more and more of an excuse to do that. And I can even see it in the pictures that I take. Like when I was looking for these photos, I had all these albums and stuff, and the amount of pictures that I took at each burn decreased because I'm not there. I'm not emotionally or physically there because I'm high. And it's really sad. And a lot of things left the wayside as a result of that addiction. I mean, I stopped documenting things, not just because I was high, but because I wasn't really doing anything, because I felt bad, because didn't have any money, because that's what I was spending my money on. It was really crappy in a lot of ways. But this is really kind of part of the culture that was enforcing that, because it looks beautiful on the outside, but you don't really see what else is happening on the other side. And again, that does not mean that burns have to be that. You don't have to do anything at a burn. That's part of the beauty of it. But unfortunately, that's not what was happening when I was there. And it was also not exclusive to the burns. So it was like what was happening at home as well. Okay, and then the last slide is it's a compilation video that I made at the end of the year, and you can watch that. It's just kind of like clips of videos that I did take during that year. And now I'm just going to kind of look at the top 5 lists of 2016 that I made. So a lot of these things are things that I already mentioned. One of the other things is that this is when bipolar kicked in for me. So for a lot of people, or women, I guess, rather, bipolar doesn't really hit until your late 20s. So I'm 28 at this time. And it was about, I think it was August that bipolar kicked in. And I mean, I had had depression since I was, I don't know, 14, 15, and plenty of other disorders like OCD and Tourette since I was 8. But the bipolar, the way that it happened, it wasn't, some people have, there's so many different variations of bipolar, but what I experienced that August was what they called rapid cycling. So I was going up and down from mania to depression, back and forth, like 3 times in a day. And looking back, was that exacerbated by drugs? Fucking probably, right? Like, I mean, there's no way that it wasn't contributing, but I also definitely have that brain chemistry that's going to support that. So, I mean, I don't know, which is it? It's probably both. So, since then, I've definitely still dealt with it. There's seasons where it comes through, like, it does seem like it is, like August seems to be the time where it kind of goes up and down. November is like a depression thing, and May is kind of like a manic time. But I don't know that I can say that it's 100% like since I stopped doing drugs that it's leveled out, or if that's also just a natural thing of like simultaneously working with additional things like getting TMS, 2 rounds of TMS, and just other coping skills that I've worked on and finding the right meds that work for me. So I don't know. I really don't know, but that was definitely the onset of that and getting that diagnosis. Songs. I was listening to Regina Spektor, Against Me, Bibio, Mr. Wives, Zara Larson. TV shows that I was watching: You're the Worst, Difficult People, Sex and the City, Love, F is for Family. Movies: Deadpool, Sisters, Trainwreck, Howl's Moving Castle, and the 2016 Ghostbusters. I went to see Louis C.K. and Tom Segura live. Oh wow, Tom Segura, he wasn't even really big then yet. I saw him at Magoobies. That's so funny, I forgot about that. I also watched Tim Minchin, Jim Jeffries, and Michael Che. Those were some of my other favorites that I saw just like watching on Netflix. I already went through the books. I also wrote down like my favorite blog posts from that year. I wrote 50 amazing things about everyday life, why self-love is important to me, how to use your white privilege to end your white privilege, you don't need to cover your under eye circles, and how to embrace your inner weird. My favorite 5 experiences that I had that were new were meeting Laura Jane Grace, who is the singer, I guess, of Against Me. Not really into that band as much anymore. It's interesting. I feel like at that time, I mean, I always loved punk music, but I think that as I've gotten more expressed or evolved, or I don't know what the right word is, I just feel less angry, so I don't feel like I identify as much with that music anymore. Got my aura photographed. That was fun. So I don't know if that was this, if I just got my aura photographed on my own that year, or if that was the year that I took people. So I was still seeing auras then, and that was another reason that I liked doing ketamine, because it dulled my sensitivity to all these like things that I was experiencing sensory wise, because I have synesthesia and I was seeing auras and all these things, and I like felt like I couldn't turn it off, and I never could. But then when I did ketamine, it turned it all off, and I was like, oh, is this how you guys are all the time? Like, you guys don't see all these external things. But people liked the aura thing. It was like a party trick. They wanted to know what color theirs was, and they would look it up and all these things. And there was actually another guy in the friend group who had synesthesia as well, and they would do these like weird kind of like, because there was a lot of the people in that group were it was weird that the dynamic in that group was the guys were like scientists. They were people that had like government clearances and doctors and like neuroscientists and biologists and engineers, and like it was wild. Like that was like kind of like the guys, and then their girlfriends. We were all like deeply insecure, anxious, and like had eating disorders, and it was just like we were all artists and creative, the girls, and we all had red hair, by the way. um but we were also just like not productive. None of us were productive, I mean, honestly, but we were just, it was just this weird, unhealthy dynamic. But anyway, the guys were always very skeptical of anything that I would ever say that was, kind of mystical or magical or esoteric or something that couldn't be proven, right? So, but there was one guy that had synesthesia as well, and they would like to do these A/B tests where they would say then like somebody in the group, and they would say like, well, what color is he? And then we would both say it at the same time, and about 85% of the time we had the same answer. And then they would do it for like numbers and letters and words and stuff like that, and it was about the same. Like we had about 85% similarities in our report of what those things were. And I feel like that helped people kind of like come around to it, because they felt like there was some sort of like reliability and validity to the quote testing of it. And then once I got my aura photographed and I realized that that was a thing you could do, I was like, I want to prove this to people. So I took people in my friend group that had consistent colors, and I was like, I'm going to take you, I'm going to pay for it, and I'm going to take you guys to get your aura photographed, and I'm not going to tell them what color I see. And I don't want you to tell them, and I want to sit down and have you guys take the picture, and you guys know what I see, and then we'll see what the pictures are. And I was right about all of them. So I was like, well, it kind of like felt validating for me that I wasn't, insane in that way, I guess. But it was also, I don't know, it was weird. Let's see. I went to a cat cafe. I had my book launch party. That was fun. I had April walked on stilts, and we had all these different like interactive tables, and I gave a speech, and I rented out a hall. It was really great. I went to see the Rainbow String exhibit at the Renwick Gallery in DC. Light City was still happening. I went to that. I went to a male social in Harrisburg. I think I went to a multiple of them. I made those street art portals, those buttons that said like things like press here to validate your existence, and I glued them on the poles. I made a skirt out of balloons. So many balloons that year. The gifts, my favorite gifts. Oh, Joe, my boyfriend, gave me a signed copy from Amy Poehler of her book, Yes, Please. My friend Lee made me a pop figure, those little action figure things. It was a custom version of me. Oh, I was also wearing flower crowns that year. That, I think, was the genesis of the flower crowns, or at least the consistency of them. And I had so many of them, and I would wear them everywhere. So that little pop figure, my accessory was I had a flower crown. It was very cute. Janice got me light up shoes. I wore those to Light City. My dad gave me a mermaid keychain. I got the new car, that big rainbow purse from Bandu. I still have that. It was actually, the strap broke, and I took it to this like guy that fixes shoes, and he fixed it for me. I got so many more flower crowns and those duffel bags. Small moments. Joe making a speech about me at my book party. That was very sweet. All the time someone on the street said thank you for the sign in the window that says you look good. Oh yeah, at that house that I did and didn't live at, I had started putting signs in the window, and one of them said you look good, and people liked that. It was like one of my first like experimenting with what I could do in terms of like interactive art with like just installations and windows and stuff. I voted for the first woman presidential candidate. I missed a really important windmill high five with Maura. We both had no spatial awareness. I'm sure that's what that was about. I found magical stuffed Olafs on the side of the road. Oh my gosh. I was driving and I was on the street, and then all of a sudden I started seeing these things like fly out of the back of a truck, and I was like, what is happening? And I realized that one of them hit my windshield, and it was a stuffed animal, and I pulled over and I was like, this is magical. I want to know what's happening. And it was like a truck must have just been carrying all these little stuffed animals of Olaf from Frozen, and I just gathered them all up, as many as I could. And I took them home and I posted it on my blog, and I said, if you pay for shipping, I'll send them to you. So people probably still have that. I have one still. Self-discoveries. Friends should be people who you are 100% comfortable to be yourself around, and they do exist. That is true, and they should also not enable you. 2, creating an overall experience is really important and it is worth the effort. Agree. 3, having a business is fucking hard, but it's what I want to do. Agree that it's fucking hard, and it is what I want to do, but it's also not the only thing I want to do. 4, it is okay to let regrets and mistakes fuel your future decisions for the better. Yeah, so I think that was the first year that I admitted that it was okay to have regrets, because like my whole life I had only said that I never had regrets, that I was not okay. Like I was like against the idea of having regrets. And then when Nanny died, my grandma, that was like the only time that I was allowing myself to say that I had a regret, because I left her hospital earlier than I wanted to out of discomfort of being in the hospital. And she died in her operation, and that was unexpected. And I regretted that I didn't stay with her longer. And I was like, so that's my only regret. Now I have one. But then I think this was the year that I was like, it's okay to like a regret can just be a failure or a mistake that's like, allowing yourself to understand a lesson. And now that's just like a natural part of my ethos, and it's not about dwelling on it, it's just about learning. And number 5 is I'm good at a lot of things. Yeah, that's true. And then there's like a little paragraph at the bottom that says, I honestly can't believe it's time to make the end of the year compilation, but I'm also really relieved that we're turning the metaphorical page into 2017. I compiled a video of little tiny, teeny moments from the past 52 weeks, and I put it to the tune of one of my favorite songs ever by Regina Spektor. There is beauty in the little things. Embrace it. So, how do I feel about 2016? So, I mean, obviously, like, the bad stuff is clearly, I would say, the drugs, right? Like, I mean, that's the worst part. That is the thread that runs into everything. It potentially triggered the bipolar. It affected my money. It affected my friendships. It affected my mental health. It affected my ability to continue being myself at the best expression. But also, like, some of the coolest things that happened this year is that even in tandem with the addiction that was developing, I created the foundation for a lot of things that would continue in my business. And there were definitely years, especially the years that I dated the second Joe, where I was in an abusive relationship, and that's a whole other thing, where I basically just stopped being a person, and that affected my business in a much deeper way. But I would say, like, what's really interesting about this year, and kind of goes back to what I said at the very beginning of this episode, of noticing that trend of things that I saw in other creatives, is that there's something about this year that seems like it set up stuff for me, and I guess maybe we could argue that for other years as well. But if I were to look back at like 2019, I don't think that's true for me at all. I mean, maybe I could find something, but there's not too much in terms of my business that I can see that's like, oh wow, there's a lot of parallels of what I want to do this year, or there's, things that I did that are like helping me now. So, for example, I would say that, publishing my first book was such a, obviously good and bad with that, with the publisher, but learning about that process and seeing what it was like and the positive aspects of that for me was such an important pivotal point in my business. And it also really helped people to take me seriously. It helped people to understand how to talk about me, because before that, I literally had people tell me, I'm so glad that you finally published a book, because now I can call you an author. Because before I had to call you my friend that dances on a bridge dressed as a troll sometimes, and I didn't know what to call you. And that is fair, but also at the same time, why do we have to put everybody in a box? But, I think for people, it does help to have something that's, a little bit more tangible. I think that, getting my feet wet with speaking, and going back to that, in terms of how parallels with this year, I would say that I'm planning to do, the re-release of this as the second edition. And I also am planning to edit and self-publish the second book that I wrote. So there's a lot of, book parallels with that. Okay, so then the events, I got my feet wet with what it looks like to, speak and be in front of audiences. And I think that that is translated not just with being at events and speaking, but also teaching. And then the photos, I would say, help me in terms of like figuring out how to plan things, what I like to post, and always still having those to go back to, which has been a wonderful capsule of not just memories but content. I starting the Merriment Makers as a group, learning what that process was like, is creating a community, and then last year starting the Positive Pulse, kind of, and then also ending the Merriment Makers as a subscription. That was a big, like, kind of parallel as well. The podcast, I'm back into doing this weekly. I am posting on YouTube weekly. I am also, I don't want to speak too soon, but I did just get a job where I'm going to be an event planner and marketer for a small business, and that's also going to help supplement my income and decrease my stress and help me express myself creatively. So there's a parallel with We Love Colors for that year. And in terms of friends, I think like we're always evolving in everything that we learn, but I can see how, all the things that I've learned, I've even like come back to some of the friends that I left or left me during that time where I, made the decision to choose one friend group over the other, and have had some really healing conversations around like what that looked like and why that was. And I think 2016 for me, my word of the year is cohesion, like an integration year, where I'm, as I'm approaching 40, I don't want to be like a full-on adult ever, but I want to have the security and the freedom of what that looks like at its fullest potential, with security and freedom simultaneously, because security grants freedom. And to not ever feel like I'm, spinning the hamster wheel and always starting from zero, and ever feeling like I'm in a scarcity mode, and being able to be more humble with what that needs to be and what that looks like, taking things a bit slower. And I think that even kind of goes back to like the goals that I set up. Like when I make goals now, it's kind of wild how many things that I expect from myself every year. And I think that that's, some of that is good, right? Because we see our potential and we know what we can do, but the pressure that we put on ourselves for certain things is kind of wild, and it gets a little bit out of hand. I would also say that it's definitely, it's been a theme for me that work has always come first since I've started this business, pretty much. And you can even see with the goals that I have here, the majority of them are around business. And the relationships that I've had, it's not that they're not theoretically important to me, but I have not prioritized them in the same way. And it's like I put my goals before my heart, and that's something that I really want to recalibrate this year and forevermore. And that's going to take a lot of unlearning. And a lot of that, I think, is wrapped up in the work that I'm doing right now with codependency. But it's also contingent, I think, as well, around that security, and me wanting to get a job where I'm being paid that's not like from my own business. There's something that's wrapped up in ego with that. And I think it happens for a lot of entrepreneurs and artists, where it's like when I go to a networking event or something, or just anywhere, and people ask what I do, and I tell them, and they say, "Oh, is that your like full-time thing? Like that's all you do?" And I've said yes for the majority of the past 13 years. There's been a couple times where I worked for We Love Colors. There was like 6 months where I worked for a florist. But regardless, the majority of it has been, yeah, no, that's just me. This is what I do. And there's a bit of pride in that. And I think there's also, I think part of it is maybe that it's creating jealousy in other people. Um, and that, I don't know, I think maybe we want to do that. Maybe it feels good to create jealousy in other people, but they wouldn't be jealous if they knew how much work it is and how stressed I am. You know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know. What is, in theory, I have never ever felt like it was a bad thing for anybody to not work for themselves or to get money from any other source or to do this part time or this part time or whatever to make it feel good for you. And if feeling good is the main thing, if we have to feel good to do good, and that is what is preventing me from feeling good, then that's what I have to do. And that's something that I really, I started talking about that back in August when I had this move, how I was like, paring back and I stopped doing Merriment Mondays live. I, I stopped back in, even before I made that move, I closed down the Feel Good Troop and Merriment Makers. And I really just started figuring out like what to focus on, but it's still a work in progress. I think part of it is just having so many ideas, having so much to say, having so many ideas of ways to help and stuff. And it comes back to feeling good before you do good. So help yourself first and then help other people. So that is pretty much it. If you made it to the end, congratulations. And I hope that, I don't know, that gives you more context for that, and that the raw honesty of all of that is, I don't know. I don't know what it is. It just is, it just fucking is, because, I think that there's so many people that will only show you the highlight compilation reel, and one of the best things that I think I do is open up. So, there are plenty of times when I do that and I get feedback and literal comments and messages where they're like, why don't you not share that? Why don't you keep that to yourself? Maybe there's some things that you should keep to yourself. And you know what? Don't listen. But also, I get to decide. Even like my friends will say, like, we need to make sure that you're just a brand. That you're just a brand. We need to focus on your branding. We need to make sure that you're perceived only as a professional. But why can't I be a professional who's honest? I feel like, especially in this world where everyone is so skeptical and so worried about being scammed, when you know that there's a real human behind something, it helps. And, maybe I shouldn't share about things that are like happening in the moment that are difficult and potentially controversial, but like if I can give you a 10-year recap on something and give you the details of what was happening with that book publisher or a drug addiction that was affecting something at that time, like, I don't think that that's hurting anybody. It might make you judge me. It might make you take me less seriously. It might make you do some things. I don't know. But we all have stuff. We all have things that we learn. We all learn at different paces. And I still maintain that you don't want someone teaching you self-development who isn't learning, who isn't struggling with something, and who hasn't struggled in the past. You don't want someone at your AA meeting who has never struggled with addiction telling you how to deal with this. You don't want someone who's constantly in the thick of it. You don't want someone who's like railing a line and being like, don't do that, stay sober. That's weird. And I can see how it can feel contradictory because I was still teaching during all of this. But I don't know. I think that there's plenty of times in life where we all do that, where we all are having a difficult time taking our own advice and being our own best student. And all I can tell you is that I'm committed to continuing to learn, grow, evolve, make mistakes, fail, try, and do better. And I hope that 2026, in 2036, if I'm lucky enough to be alive and do something similar to this, that it's, not as fucked up, but still helpful and teaching and honest and real. So I love you, and I'll see you next time.